If we put the Chicago Bears quarterback debate aside for a moment, whoever is under center this season is going to need better weapons in order to be successful. And that could potentially include another tight end with the 9th overall pick.
You are Locked On Bears, your daily Chicago Bears podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
This is Locked On Bears, and I'm your host, Lauren Cox. I'm here to bring you your daily, in-depth Chicago Bears news and analysis. You can follow me on Twitter/X at CoxSports1. You can follow Locked On Bears on all of your favorite social media platforms, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, you name it, including the Locked On Bears YouTube channel, where you can subscribe to keep up with all of our video podcasts as well. Thanks for making Locked On Bears your first listen today. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. On the show today, we'll be joined by former NFL tight end Clay Harbor, who now covers the Chicago Bears, among other things. You can hear him on sports radio and sports television throughout the Chicago area. And we're going to take the conversation beyond the quarterback debate and kind of get into the other Bears off-season priorities, which certainly he sees priority number one as more weapons for the quarterback. So we'll look at what they need to do at wide receiver. We'll touch on whether or not the running back position could be an emphasis there as well. And then we'll get to the draft with a 9th overall pick and why he's such a big believer in Georgia tight end Brock Bowers. And we'll debate a little bit whether or not a player like that, who's not purely a tight end, but could be a weapon for the Bears offense, whether that's worth the 9th overall pick for this Bears team right now. Lots of good stuff to get into with Clay. He's a friend of the show. We hung out this past season in the Senior Bowl as well. We'll keep coming back to him throughout the offseason here on the podcast. So let's jump right in. All right, joining us now on the Locked On Bears podcast is former NFL tight end Clay Harbor. You can follow him on Twitter at ClayHarbs82. Clay, thanks for joining us today. And I want to start by asking, with this Bears quarterback situation, how tired of it are you by now of Caleb versus Justin? Like, we're only in mid-February, and it feels like we've been talking about this for months.
Man, it's funny. I don't like the word toxic, but it is just such a toxic topic of conversation in Chicago right now, because there's so many people that are so passionate about this, because obviously you got the Justin fans that feel like it hasn't been a fair time for him. He didn't have enough weapons. He didn't have the coaching staff. He was here during a teardown. Then you have the Caleb's people like, listen, this guy's had 36 starts. It's time to move on. You have the number one pick. How often do you have the number one pick? And there's so many people that are so opinionated by this. It just becomes this crazy scenario to where whatever side you're on, you are getting a lot of hate from the other side, because people are very strong in their opinions about this. And I'm ready for it to be over with. And there's a lot of people saying that the Bears are going to have a decision. We have the combine coming up, right? So at the combine, that's when you kind of get a feel for the trade offers, what's going to happen. And I think if they do trade Fields, which I think is going to happen, I'm not saying what's right or what's wrong, but I'm saying I think that will happen. I think it's going to happen sooner than people think. It's not going to be dragged out all the way until the NFL draft, and there's a draft day trade, and then the Bears draft Williams, they trade Field. No, Justin will get traded sooner than later, and then you will know that the Bears are probably going Williams, and maybe they'll keep you guessing about Drake May because there'd be a possibility of a trade down or, whatever. But I'm ready for it to be over. Unfortunately, or fortunately, it gives us a lot to talk about. There's a lot of opinions on the matter, but it has become this toxic environment, Lauren, as if you support Justin or if you support Caleb, that people are so opinionated by it. It's tough to even talk about it anymore.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it being over. I mean, we're just talking ourselves in circles at this point, and hopefully the combine gives us some sweet relief. But I wanted to look like beyond the quarterback position a little bit. Obviously, the Bears have a bunch of salary cap space. They've got some decent draft capital. They might get more if they trade Justin Fields, etc. they've got some options to upgrade this roster. And I'm curious, if you're Ryan Poles or your general manager in charge of this organization, what's kind of your next priority after? Obviously, you got to get the quarterback situation figured out one way or the other. Then what's next up on the list for you?
No, yeah, absolutely. And I think there's more than one path to success. And I think that's what people need to realize. As I've always said, I think there's a path to success with Justin Fields. There's absolutely a path to success with a young quarterback, Caleb Williams. You see what happened with C.J. Stroud last year. There is multiple paths here to success, obviously multiple paths as well to failure. But in my opinion, the next logical step is you got to put more weapons around your quarterback. I don't care if it's Justin. I don't care if it's Caleb. In the situation that we were in last year, obviously people thought Chase Claypool was going to have this big breakout season. Didn't pan out. The guy had a 20% drop rate. He didn't last. He was supposed to be your number 2 wide receiver. He's gone. Okay. Darnell Mooney, people were expecting him to take a step up. He didn't. 15% drop rate. He caught 56% of the passes that were thrown to him. He had a 56 passer rating when targeted. For whatever reason, Darnell Mooney wasn't getting open the same way. He had the highest drop rate of his career, and he didn't pan out. So that leaves you with Velus Jones and Tyler Scott after DJ Moore, Lauren. So to me, that is not a fair group of wide receivers. And I'm not saying, okay, Tyler Scott, not a good year. He dropped some passes. He had one of the lowest reception percentages when targeted in the entire NFL. Velus Jones had a 20% drop rate, Lauren. If you don't know, that's every 100 balls thrown to you, you're dropping 20 of them. That is insane. So to me, that is not a fair wide receiver crew for any quarterback. If you have Caleb, if you have Justin, your number one job this offseason is to bring in more weapons with DJ Moore. I love Moore. I love Kmet. I think they're sure-handed guys. They're catching the ball great, but you can't have just 2 players. Okay, obviously there's injuries. Obviously you can key on these guys now, but once you bring in, I don't know if it's a draft, a Neighbors, no Dunze, if you're able to get those, if you keep Justin, it could be Marvin Harrison Jr. Or you go into free agency. I want a T. Higgins. I want a Michael Pittman Jr. I want somebody like that you can have these consistent guys that can catch the ball, and then now you can start to judge your quarterback because you have more consistent wide receivers.
This episode of Locked On Bears is brought to you by our friends at FanDuel Sportsbook, America's #1 sportsbook. Because right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. So on top of the winnings you get just for getting your bet correct, they're adding an extra $150 in your account that you can use to bet on anything. Just because football season is over doesn't mean the football betting is done at FanDuel. They've got NFL draft, prop bets, free agency bets are around the corner. And then, of course, all of your other favorite sports, college basketball, the NBA, the NHL, soccer, tennis, hockey, boxing, you name it, they have it all at FanDuel. And you're going to get an extra $150 to play with any winning $5 bet. It's a great time to get started. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn to take advantage. That's FanDuel.com/LockedOn. FanDuel, official sportsbook partner of the NBA and NFL. I do want to get into some of the different draft options here at 9 in a little bit, but briefly, what do you think about the running back position? I mean, obviously, I like Khalil Herbert and Roshan Johnson, but you've got some salary cap space. Maybe you have the luxury. I mean, would you want to add somebody like if Saquon Barkley hit the open market, if Josh Jacobs hits free agency, one of these kind of guys that, sure, you don't need a running back per se, but you pair Caleb Williams or even a Justin Fields with maybe even a more dynamic back. I mean, I can see the appeal. I don't know if it'd be my first choice, but where do you sort of land on maybe taking a splash at running back versus sticking with the young guys that you got?
I like sticking with the young guys. I think that they showed that they could play. I really like what I saw from Roshan. I think Herbert, he came on near the end of the year. We expected a lot from him to start the season with his huge yards per carry last season, leading the NFL, 5.7. And, Roshan, I think you give these 2 guys an opportunity together again. I think you have what you need there. With Saquon and Josh Jacobs, I mean, it's intriguing. Saquon's only 27, but there's a lot of tread on those tires. I mean, there's been a lot of tread taking off of those tires. And you got the injury. I think they're still big players, but they're gonna require, a bigger salary. I think maybe a guy like DeAndre Swift, that's a free agent from Philadelphia, guy that can catch the ball at the backfield. He had a 1,000-yard season. He's only 25. The Eagles don't pay running backs. I think he hits the open market. If you can get a guy like him on a good deal, I think, yeah, you maybe take a shot for that second tier of running back. But I like what the Bears are doing with their young guys. And then you can find somebody else, I think, in the draft in that 3rd to 4th to 5th round range, because running back, I think, is one of those positions. I think they're undervalued. But for some reason, you always find players later in the draft. I mean, you look at the Super Bowl, Isaiah Pacheco, what he was able to do is very impressive. And he was a 7th round draft pick.
Yeah, I mean, and Roshan Johnson is a 4th, and Khalil Herbert was a 5th or a 6th round pick. So definitely the Bears have shown a penchant in that regard. Let's go to the 9th overall pick now. Assuming, okay, the quarterback position is taken care of with the number 1 overall pick or Fields in some capacity. You get to 9. I guess let's start the conversation here. Are you in the boat of get another top 10 caliber player with the 9th overall pick, or are you open to trading down from that spot with the ability to acquire more picks? Because I see it both ways, where it's like, yes, more draft picks means you can build out more spots in your roster, but you're not often picking in the top 10 twice to get like that caliber of player. You can't get that good of a player, even if you trade down, 5 or 6 spots. So obviously the offer's got to be right, but in an ideal world, are you staying there and taking a guy you love, or are you trying to get more draft picks from a move down?
In my opinion, it depends on what you do in free agency, right? And who's available. But
Sure.
In free agency, say if you take care of the wide receiver issue in free agency, you bring in a couple of guys that you trust and that you can have confidence in, that can catch the ball consistently, get open consistently, because that matters. I mean, no quarterback's going to be great without those receivers. You look at the difference from Patrick Mahomes. Obviously, he won the Super Bowl this year, but from when he had big-time receivers, and this is a guy that even has the greatest tight end in NFL history, to what he has now. And obviously, Rashee Rice came on late, MBS came on late, but you saw the struggles there when they were dropping the balls earlier in the season. So to me, here's your scenarios. If you take care of the wide receiver position and you don't have to worry about that, then you can trade down, I think. But if you're in a position to get Odunze, which a lot of the mocks, and you never know how it goes. Me personally watching him, I think he's a guy that could be a number 1, a 1A and a 1B now with DJ Moore and obviously Odunze, and then Malik Neighbors if he falls, and obviously Marvin Harrison Jr. isn't going to fall. So in my opinion, if you don't handle the wide receiver and those guys are there, you need to take them. But I wouldn't be opposed. Say the receiver's gone, or you handle it in free agency, and you get an offer like the Bears. Like a deal like the Bears did for Fields back in 2021. The Bears traded up from 20 to number 11. They gave a 5th round pick this year and their first, obviously, and then next year a 1 and a 4. So if you could trade back from, say, 9 to 18, 19, 20, you'd have an opportunity to maybe get like a Jackson Powers Johnson guy, a guy I know me and you were at the Senior Bowl, fell in love with. You can get a Tyler Guyton type offensive tackle, another guy we really loved at the Senior Bowl. I mean, there are some players down there that can really help your team in a different position. If you want to go, hey, franchise center, Jackson Powers Johnson, fell in love with this guy at the Senior Bowl. We know Ryan Poles values the Senior Bowl. We know last year he fell in love with Darnell Wright at the Senior Bowl. I think if you get a center that could be your franchise center, now you got your big left tackle, you got your rookie right tackle, and your guards kind of set. I think that would be a cool scenario for the Bears. So I'm open to trading down. And obviously, if Odunze is there and you don't have a receiver, you take him. But some other guys I love, Dallas Turner, SEC Defensive Player of the Year. Wouldn't be upset if you leave the draft with him, an edge rusher to put alongside Montez Sweat. I think Laiatu Latu, 23 and a half sacks for the past 2 seasons. And obviously a guy we've talked about, Brock Bowers as well.
Yeah, I want to get into Brock Bowers now. Some Bears fans might see tight end, 9th overall pick. We have Cole Kmet. Why do we need wide receivers? And I hope we're smart enough to go beyond the conversation of like, okay, he's listed at tight end, but does not play the exact same position as Cole Kmet. He's not going to take snaps away from Cole Kmet directly in that regard. But we can get to the broader conversation of like, okay, is that position valuable enough to take at the 9th overall pick? No disrespect to you as a tight end, but you don't see a lot of tight ends go top 10. You don't see tight ends get paid as much as, say, wide receivers that you might take in the top 10 or edge rushers that you take in the top 10. Like the NFL doesn't quite value them at the same level as those, more premium positions. But what about Brock Bowers for you sells him as a guy that is worth a top 10 pick?
Well, first of all, when we talk about value at tight ends, Lauren, here's the thing. You look at the Super Bowl. We have Kittle and Kelsey. Is it a coincidence that the two best tight ends in the NFL are in the Super Bowl? Is it a coincidence you go back another game? I mean, you got Sam Laporta, a guy who came out this year and just had an excellent year. You go back and you see Isaiah Likely, Mark Andrews, two really good tight ends, and you keep going back. And teams that have successful tight ends just seem to be better teams, better offenses. And that's something that you can say across the league. I mean, it's a trend. Obviously, you have better players, you win more games. But tight end is important, and here's why. It's the fact if you put a guy like Brock Bowers with Cole Kmet, it allows creativity. So when you're a defense and you see a team come in with 12 personnel, now you're expecting a run-heavy type. They're trying to put a big package in there. It's probably going to be a too tight. Maybe they got one of the guys in the backfield. But if you bring in a guy like Brock Bowers, the fact that he is so versatile, he can do so many things. Shane Waldron was 9th in the NFL in 2 tight end sets. He ran 13 personnel as well, 3 tight end sets. You come out with Bowers. Bowers can play outside. Bowers can play slot. Cole Kmet isn't allergic to being outside in the slot either. So now this team sees you come in with a personnel grouping that says too tight. You come out in a 4 wide set, and now you got linebackers trying to guard these tight ends because they put their big package in, their base package in. And now Bowers is in space against a linebacker. And you'll see that's why Sam Laporta was able to have so much success. He's a guy that you bring in these 2 tight. Now you're matching him up with a linebacker. Linebackers won't be able to block Brock Bowers. I just did my tape study on him last week. This guy took handoffs. He plays out wide. He was playing fullback. He's doing everything. So for me, you give an opportunity for an offensive coordinator to just be more creative, and now you can trick defenses. They don't know what you're doing when you come in with a 2 tight end set or a 3 tight end set because these guys are versatile. And Brock Bowers isn't a great blocker, but you have Cole Kmet, who I've said it once. I know I've said it on your podcast before. But the fact that he can hold up in line against a defensive end just opens up so many things for your team. Most tight ends, if you're running to them in zone or power, you're going to have to sift them backside, arc released on a safety, because they can't hold up against a defensive end. Cole Kmet can. And Brock Bowers is tough. He tries to be physical. He mixes up. So he can cut off the defensive end. So he's not a guy that you can really just play nickel to when he comes in the game. And if you do, then you have an advantage because now it's Brock Bowers on a nickel, and he will be able to handle a nickel defender because he's bigger and stronger, and now you get an advantage in the run game. So stop undervaluing my tight ends. I would love the Brock Bowers pick. I know we need a receiver, but he is not your typical tight end, and it allows for so much more creativity to your team.
So I agree with you that I think Brock Bowers is a top 10 pick caliber tight end in this draft, but I also think you mentioned all the tight ends in the Super Bowl, Mark Andrews, Isaiah Likely, or in the championship games, George Kittle, Travis Kelce, Sam Laporta. None of those guys were first-round picks. And you look later in this draft, there's a guy I know you love, like Ben Sinnott from Kansas State, although other guys like Theo Johnson from Penn State and some down hooker from Colorado State, like not elite guys. It's not a deep tight end draft class, but at the same time, you can find good, maybe not as elite as Brock Bowers, but good tight ends later on. So like, I know we see guys go later in this draft every single year that end up being good. It's kind of like the running back conversation. Like Brock Bowers is a special tight end, but very good. But tight ends can go later in the draft. So do you need a special tight end to pair with Cole Kmet, or can you get away with and still have some dynamic offense with a number 2 tight end that's more like a Ben Sinnott, who's not the same level of athletic freak, but is still a valuable weapon for your offense?
I don't even want to talk about this because, I don't know who's listening to your podcast. I know, you got a lot, but I don't know if, maybe the Packers are listening to it. You're up there in Madison. So, but Ben Sinnott, man, under the radar guy. I just don't want them to hear about this kid. I'm hoping he flies under the radar and the Bears can snag him in the 4th or the 5th. He's not getting a lot of buzz. But to me, we saw him at the Senior Bowl. We go, wow. They first off, they said this guy was like a fullback H-back. He can hold up in line.
Oh, yeah.
He can hold up in line. He is a blocker. He is a tail kicker. And I say that in the nicest way possible. He is a tail kicker. He gives great effort, but he puts movement. You can put this guy on the move. You can put him as that H-back because he's versatile, but he can hold up in line. And that's the thing that's so impressive about him. He's obviously big. He's athletic. I think he runs maximum of 4.6. This guy can actually move. He's 6'4", 250. How do you call this guy an H-back? I went back after Senior Bowl and watched some of his tape and couldn't be more impressed. This guy makes plays, great hands, tough blocker, plays hard. He's a junior. He's coming out early. So this guy is actually young. So I'm a huge Ben Sinnott guy. And then you said Theo Johnson, another guy we saw out there at the Senior Bowl. Big guy, can run, can catch. He's a solid inline blocker. He's not as versatile. He's not going to do as many crazy things as Ben Sinnott, I think. But he's a guy that I like too. And if you want to go with like an H-back guy, what's his Jaheim Bell? Was that who it was out there?
Yeah, from Florida State.
Yeah, from Florida State. I really liked him as well. He did some good things, and he's a guy that you can move around. You can play in the slot. You can play outside. So I think there are some later options if you do decide you need to go tight end. I think that's with Robert Tonyan. To me, he didn't play well enough. He had some drops. He wasn't consistent in the run game. I think you can upgrade that tight end position and allow yourself some versatility. If you don't go Bowers, Sinnott, Johnson, Bell are three guys that I really like.
Clay, your tight end analysis is second to none. I'm glad I got you fired up about Brock Bowers on the podcast today. Let everybody know where they can find your stuff online and where they can follow you and all that good stuff.
Yeah, just follow me on Twitter. That's where I post all my stuff, what I'm up to, and that's Clay Harbs 82, not Clay Harbs 26. When I logged in today with Lauren, he had my Twitter handle on the page as Clay Harbor 26. I'm like, Lauren, that might be a good, Twitter handle, but it's not mine.
Let's try to funnel everybody to your burner account, Clay Harbor 26. Yeah. You never know it was yours if it had the 26 in there. No, yeah. But he's a regular guest on sports radio in Chicago and sports television in Chicago. Lots of great Bears stuff coming from Clay. So go check out his work. And Clay, we'll do it again sometime soon, but good to see you again. And thanks for joining us.
Appreciate it, Lauren. Thanks for having me.
Thanks again to Clay Harbor for joining us on the podcast today. If you enjoyed our conversation, make sure you hit that subscribe button wherever you're listening to the podcast or on the Locked On Bears YouTube channel to keep up with all of our video podcasts as well. In fact, subscribe in both places. That way you're not going to miss a single thing. Really appreciate you making Locked On Bears your first listen today and hopefully every single day. We're going to keep having great guests like Clay on throughout the offseason. Next week, we're heading to the NFL Scouting Combine, and we're going to get some up-close and personal audio from Matt Eberflus, Ryan Poles, and a bunch of the top NFL draft prospects, and from our friends across the media as well will be able to join us in person for the podcasts in Indianapolis. So lots of goodies coming to you next week, but we'll still be here for the rest of this week as well, getting you ready for this Bears offseason as it comes along, not drowning you in quarterback debate talk over and over again, and of course, making sure that every day we give you another opportunity to bear down.